We're going to let folks come in from the waiting room here. Going to try and deactivate the waiting room. There we go. Okay, so I've had to do this on every Zoom webinar that I've been on. They've made an update and the deactivating the waiting room has gotten me every time, but I did it this time. I got it. All righty. So good morning, everybody. I am going to just give it a second, let people come in, make sure everyone's getting connected to audio. If you can hear my voice, you're connected and hopefully in the right space for the Non-Credit Strategies at Work grant kickoff meeting for FY26. All righty. So for those of you who don't know me or don't recognize my voice, my name is Brittany Boston, and I am with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support, or ICSPS for short. And our center helps support ICCB with the NSAW grant, as well as numerous other grants and projects that they have housed within ICCB. So you will be hearing my voice and seeing my name through email, through operational meetings, professional development meetings. We help support them with all of those things, as well as the conference. Just a few housekeeping items. We are on Zoom meeting, so you are able to turn your camera on. You are able to mute and unmute yourself. I always want to give folks a gentle reminder of that because we are also recording this meeting today. So if you'd rather not have your video or image recorded, please feel free to turn your camera off. And then if you have to step away for anything, if you have to take a phone call or just excuse yourself, just be mindful of the video and microphone button and make sure that cameras are turned off and you are muted as well. Like I said, we are recording, so this will be shared on our SAW grantee support page, which I will put a link to that in the chat here momentarily. If you have any technical questions or support that you need with Zoom, please feel free to message myself or Dalton Byers, and we will do our best to get you taken care of. We also have closed captioning available if you would like to utilize that. And with that, I think that's all my housekeeping. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Alex to get us started with the content today.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, Brittany, and thank you, Dalton. I just want to give a shout out to our folks at ICSPS for all the help they give us here at the ICCB with all of our NSAW related grant activities. So first off, welcome. My name is Alex Weidenhammer. I am the Director for Workforce Training. I realize I see a lot of familiar faces, familiar names, but in case you don't know me, I oversee a lot of the day-to-day activities and grant oversight for the Non-Credit Strategies at Work grant. So moving forward, there'll be a lot of emails from me, either through our listserv. We'll be sure to get to know each other pretty well. So for today, we're going to focus on, I'm going to minimize our window here real quick, just so we can see everything. If you already haven't done so, please be sure to sign into our chat with just your name and your organization. And for today's agenda, we're really going to be diving into a lot of important information regarding the NSAW grant here in FY26. So we're going to focus on a grant overview. Once again, if you've previously worked on the NSAW grant, a lot of this information is going to be a review for you. But like I said, if you're new to the grant, this is going to be some key information about exactly what the NSAW grant, what's the overall mission, the focus, the target audience, and so on and so forth. After we move on from the grant overview, we're going to focus on a bit of reporting. Once again, we have some not changes, but just some important information that we want to share regarding reporting to the ICCB each quarter for the NSAW grant. And then aside from the reporting requirements, sorry, I read the expectations there, just expectations for working on the NSAW grant itself. And as Brittany said, today's meeting is being recorded. So if there's anybody who could not be in attendance here today, that information, this recording and the slides will be posted to the ICSPS NSAW grantee support page. We'll be sure to share that link with everybody. At any time during today's meeting, I'm going to be doing a lot of talking, but at the same time, I want to be sure to hear from all of you as well. So feel free to post any questions here in the chat. And then after today's meeting, we're also going to take some time to open the floor for any general questions, or maybe answer questions during the presentation itself that we couldn't quite get to. So feel free. And we're actually going to have a few moments today where we're going to be opening the floor to discussion as well. And at those moments, if you would like to type your responses in the chat or unmute yourself, feel free to do so. Like I said, I want to make this not so much me talking at everybody, but having the conversation regarding the grant. So we're going to start off with our funding overview. So a lot of this is going to be review if you've been on the NSAW grant. So for FY26, the ICCB was appropriated from the General Revenue Fund $4.8 million to $4.8 million to administer grants that support non-credit training, including business solution initiatives. So like I said, this is the work that has been continuing since the inception of the grant in FY24. We're just finishing up FY25, the final quarter four report to do here on the 30th. So we're really excited once again to have another opportunity to continue supporting our non-credit sides of the house of the colleges through this funding opportunity. For the maximum amount of funding, it was actually increased this year. For those of you who had applied on the grant, we increased it, I believe, from 105,000 to 110,000. So once again, we were able to kind of raise the funding ceiling for each of our grantees, and that's another great sign. Moving forward each year with the grant, we're hoping, fingers crossed, to continue with this funding each year, and hopefully down the road, see where that funding threshold leads, right? It's always nice to have more money, right? For the grant period, it is on a calendar year. So it's going to run from January 1st of 2026 to December 31st of 2026, which is the same as last year as well. This is a non-competitive funding opportunity. So once again, this is a little bit different than some of the other grants here at the ICCB. This is non-competitive. We tried to fund every single college, I believe, was funded who applied for the NSAW grant. We're trying to make sure that we are reaching as much of the state as possible. Grantees may subcontract services for the NSAW grant, which is something that we've seen over the previous iterations of the grant, is that a lot of colleges have begun working with consultants working with consultants to enhance the program services and reduce the barriers for all eligible employers and students, which is the overall focus of this grant, right? To reduce the barriers for our students to work through our non-credit programs. And then this final note here, internal collaboration is highly encouraged. This is a huge point when it comes to the NSAW grant. We know that in previous years and working into FY26, especially when it comes to the non-credit to credit transition work, internal collaboration is very, very important for this grant. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the non-credit to credit transition work here later on in the presentation. But once again, just wanted to highlight that point that working internally with different divisions within your college to bolster your work on the NSAW grant is really imperative to the success of the programs, right? So with that, with the funding overview, we're going to look at the target entities, and these have not changed from year to year. These are still the same. And we have three main target entities that we are trying to serve through the NSAW grant. So the first is employers, right? We know that a lot of employers seek out non-credit business solution, other training needs through your programs throughout the state. So we wanted to make sure there was a dedicated pool of funding to serve the employers all throughout the state to address their needs and their wants when it comes to training their workforce, upskilling, so on and so forth. For individuals 18 years or older, we want to make sure that we're leading those students to employment in high skill, high wage, and in-demand occupations. In-demand is kind of a very important thing as well, with an emphasis on those underserved by education and workforce systems. So equity is another big focus of our grant here, the NSAW grant. And then also incumbent workers. So working directly with your local employers, whether they are larger employers. We have a focus on small businesses, but once again, small businesses are not the only businesses you can serve through the NSAW grant, but it is highly encouraged to be working directly with those local employers or smaller businesses that are within your college district. So with that, real quick, so that's just a very, very brief overview of the grant itself, and there's always more information in the NOFO regarding the overall mission and the purpose of the NSAW grant. But what I want to take a moment here to do as well is just kind of share, as you can see here, the story so far. This is our third year of having the NSAW grant, having this dedicated line of funding for our non-credit programs across the state. And one thing that I've kind of really tried to stress when it comes to advocating is when it comes to sharing this information with the legislature, right, when they are assessing the budget book every year to advocate for this line of funding, having the data is so important when it comes to sharing this information with the legislature, like I said. So what I want to do is just kind of touch base and kind of show how the NSAW grant has grown over the past few years from FY24 to FY25. So real quick, starting off just with employer training participants. So these are all programs participants who have been served who are connected directly to employers. And what I like to do is kind of show the trends by each quarter, right? To kind of show exactly where we were in quarter one of FY24 compared to 25, the iteration of the grant that we are getting ready to conclude. And as you can see from the chart, we've seen consistent growth so far between the 2 years, comparing those 2 quarters together. Starting here in quarter one, we kind of had this is our first year of the grant, getting back on track, moving forward with the grant, kind of everyone learning. And as we move into quarter two, we saw a huge growth in the number of participants when it came to employers. We went from 958 in that single quarter to 1,794. And then for quarter three, the previous quarter that we have data for, once again, we saw a pretty substantial area of growth with over 2,104 participants being served just in that quarter alone through employer connected training through the NSAW grant. So once again, charting that growth is so important because we know that NSAW non-credit funding was kind of non-existent for quite a while. So having this information is very imperative when it comes to stating the case for why we need this dedicated line of funding. And we at the ICCB, we're consistently trying to collect this data so we can continue advocating for all of you out there at the colleges. And one thing too is we like to look at sector analysis. Sector analysis is so interesting just to see exactly when it comes to our 3 main buckets of the grant, where training is being focused on very intently, right? And as you can see from this grant here, we have our career clusters here at the bottom of the chart here with the number of trainings and then the total number of participants. So as you can see here, manufacturing, when it comes to employer training connected services, is really taking the lead here in FY25 with 1,366 participants total throughout the course of the grant. And I'm not going to read all these verbatim, but you can see that education, training, health science, human services are also serving large numbers of participants when it comes to employer connected trainings as well. So moving on to our non-employer connected training. So these are all of the in-house non-credit trainings that the colleges offer. So these are things that I'm trying to think of some good examples. These would be like the phlebotomy courses or the welding training courses, perhaps, or any kind of sector-specific trainings that the colleges offer in-house through their non-credit programs. As you can see here, there has still been consistent growth between quarter one and quarter two. In quarter three, there was a little bit of a disconnect. Here in quarter three of FY24, we had a bit more participants being served, 1,313, and we were still well over the 1,000 mark for quarter three of this year. And then once again, just looking at the sector analysis. So where exactly are these non-employer connected participants being served through which sectors? And you can see here that health science is actually kind of taken the lead here in FY25. We know that there are a lot of health science programs that are currently being built with the FY26 funds as well. So we're kind of keeping an eye and just making sure we see where exactly which sectors are being served the most through the grant funding. So for non-employer connected trainings, health science has taken the lead for FY25 with education and training following very, very closely. Manufacturing is also one of the leaders here when it comes to serving participants in non-credit, non-employer connected trainings. And then there is the other bucket, which kind of has a large spectrum of different trainings that are being offered through all the in-house non-credit trainings. And then for our employer connected services, so this is our third and final bucket of the NSAW grant. So these are whether you're working with businesses through your college providing consulting services, contract procurement, the services that you provide directly to employers at your college. So once again, you can see there has been very consistent growth over the course of FY24 and FY25 up to quarter three. And we're looking to see once those quarter four numbers come in, how exactly have these numbers shifted? Have they continued to grow? The data is kind of showing that this is very much needed in our college districts and all across our state. Our employers are very thankful for these services that our colleges are able to provide to them. Um, so once again, I didn't want to read everything verbatim, but just give you kind of a sense of exactly how our grant is continuing to grow from FY24 to FY25. And hopefully, and I'm, if the data doesn't lie, moving forward in FY26 continues to grow across the state. So like I said, this is just a very kind of global level overview of exactly what the NSAW grant has done so far for serving our participants and our employers across the state. So now that we focus kind of on what we've done here in the past, showing that growth, we're going to focus on the grant objectives and the activities. So once again, this might be a lot of review, but if you're newer to the NSAW grant, this is going to be valuable information moving forward. So the three main core objectives of the NSAW grant are to expand non-credit program offerings. So these should prioritize significantly in demand, as I mentioned earlier, in emerging occupations for programming built, expanded, or supported through this grant. To offer business solutions to employers. So in addition to the customized training, community colleges can offer a large spectrum of business solutions to employers. These can be quality and safety audits, training workshops relevant to leadership at that employer, essential employability skills. We still have a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion and access, and contract procurement assistance. Once again, this list kind of goes on and on. As I mentioned earlier, colleges should prioritize working with small businesses. So those are businesses that have 500 employees or less, as well as minority or women-owned businesses for these business solutions. So one thing that I want to stress is that you are not you don't exactly have to serve just small businesses through the NSAW grant. If you had a larger employer who reached out to your college and wanted to have a essential employability skills training for their staff, that is acceptable as well and allowable under the grant. We just really want to make sure that we're trying to focus on those smaller businesses as well, so those who are 500 employees or less. And then for the final objective is to increase affordability of non-credit training for students. I feel that with grants, one of the major objectives for all of them is to really reduce and to break those barriers for students to gain access to education in meaningful sectors and meaningful jobs, right? Particularly when we focus those who are low income, are or underemployed, or otherwise underrepresented in the sector in which the training is being offered. So one thing that you may do during the course of the grant is you can offset the cost of trainings both for employers and for students. Creating non-credit apprenticeship programs, which moving from FY25 into FY26, we've seen a large increase in the amount of apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs that are being built through non-credit. So that's another great avenue to kind of reduce barriers for students who are looking for entry into in-demand and well-paying jobs as well. And then increasing efficiencies within the college to sustain the affordability of your program moving forward as well. So with that, with the objectives, we're going to move on to our required activities. So first and foremost, as the name kind of suggests, we're focused on non-credit training. So offering non-credit training is the very core focus of this grant as well. So colleges are required to utilize grant funds for non-credit training. So this must not supplant current offerings. So these are usually new programs that we're looking to build with the NSAW grant. But once again, we know that that's not exactly the case every time, right? Between year to year, a lot of you are building new programs, but we're also looking to sustain and continue building upon the work that you've done in previous iterations of the grant, which is something we've seen from year to year, how these programs are evolving and growing, moving between the grant cycles. So once again, this can include customized training for incumbent workers or training for new entrants to the workforce that culminates in an industry recognized credential. And then training must be for an in-demand or an emerging field. So really quickly, just before we dive into our next activity, I want to kind of open the floor to everyone and just kind of have a discussion here. We know that there is a lot of interesting and innovative programs being built all throughout the state. Reading through the grant applications is always really fun for me at the beginning of the year, just to see how these programs are being built and the new innovative practices that our colleges are implementing at their areas, right? So I wanted everyone to take a moment here. If you could briefly describe your proposed project for the FY26 NSAW grant, and you can feel free to type that into the chat, or you can go ahead and unmute yourself as well, and just kind of give us a quick synopsis of what work that you're going to be conducting here in FY26.
Alex,
Yes. Hello.
I'll start.
Good
Hi.
morning. Thank you.
Good morning. I'll break the ice.
Sure.
I'm Christy Stevenson from Shawnee College. This is our third round of the grant, and we're carrying over in one area, which is our EMR, EMT training, which is we're developing. It's a pathway to paramedicine, which is very much needed in our southernmost 5 counties. We have 3 counties that don't have paramedic service. And so we're continuing on in the health science area. And then also within our workforce training and CTE side, to benefit our truck driving program, we're going to be able to construct and acquire equipment that will allow us to do specific training for on like dump trucks, which
Mhm.
a lot of our industry in our area have said that while our truck driving program is very good, we don't have that ability to teach that specific skill.
Mhm.
So it will allow us to kind of meet the needs of what we're hearing from our employers, and then also provide forklift training, which we don't have presently and is very much in need. So 2 areas, health science, and then the other side for our CTE. So thank you. We very much appreciate the grant, and it's allowed us to do some great things. Round 2, we were able to offer an artificial insemination for bovine certification class, which really helped with our ag industry down here.
Mm. Excellent. Thanks, Christy.
So, Alex, we did have quite a few people type in the chat
Oh,
here.
okay. Sure.
So Leah says focusing on wraparounds to support transition of adult ed students, neurodivergent students, certifications in non-credit and pathways. IECC is going to continue with leadership, computer skills, and safety trainings, and are expanding to offer lean trainings, or LEAN. I don't know if that's an acronym that I'm just not familiar with.
Mhm. I believe is it, if I'm not incorrect here, I think it's tied to manufacturing, if I'm correct, lean manufacturing.
It's it is
Oh,
reducing waste in usually the manufacturing and healthcare environment.
excellent.
Okay, beautiful. And then CLC is continuing to grow industrial technology training offerings, project management for manufacturers, and
Mhm.
supervisor manager for manufacturers. Uh, let's see. Kristen says building collaborative relationships with local chambers and EDC to provide leadership training. RCC supplemental training for apprentice and pre-apprenticeship students. Bonnie says they're utilizing these grant dollars in a few ways. So the majority is going to bring K through 12 educators to our new Effingham Technology Center, offering PDUs, STEM training, sharing how the school districts can utilize the new innovation center to complement their learning. That's awesome.
That is, yeah.
Using the rest of the dollars to develop a basic hospitality program and then offset the cost of training for local employers, particularly for essential workplace skills and leadership. And I'm happy to keep rolling through these. We're very, very chatty in the chat, not so much coming off mute, but
That's okay too. I mean, it's great to see though. I mean, how varied these projects are and just how everyone is addressing the needs of their communities. I mean, that's as educators, that's one of the main things that we really want to focus on, right? So this is excellent to see how all these different programs, how varied they are serving your individual communities and maybe underrepresented populations as well. I know that there's been a lot of work working in neurodiversity here over the past couple of years, and I think that in FY26, that's another trend that we've seen kind of increase with our non-credit program. So it's great to see. But I can see here.
I'm sorry.
Oh, hi, Christina.
Sorry. Hi guys. It's Christina from Heartland Community College. You were just mentioning, and someone else mentioned like the opportunity to kind of continue and expand. We're excited because of two areas. We're like third time's a charm, friends, and that
Right.
is for what you're saying on reaching more underrepresented populations
Mhm.
in our District 540. So we're actually using grant funds to help bring kind of some employability skills training, which we haven't had to focus on in my unit because of our focus on incumbent worker. So we're trying that approach as well as strengthening that potential to keep helping with credentials that mean something to the local workforce. And so we're focusing on some exploration of returning our Nussbaum Trucking Academy at Heartland to 1.6 status. And also our dean is working with some of the credit departments on a potential to incubate some 1.2 classes here this year. So TBD, but we're very excited about the opportunity to try some of the areas that we haven't hit pay dirt yet in years 1 and 2, but 2026 is a new year. So again, thank you for the continuation of these funds and excited about that.
Excellent. Thank you, Christina. And great information. Thank you for sharing. Mm-hmm. Okay. Was there anyone else who wanted to share their program? I know there's a lot in the chat and I can't really access it right now. I'll be sure to go back here after the end of the meeting and recap everything that everyone's saying. I love seeing how these programs are being built. But for the sake of time, because we do have a lot of information to cover, we'll continue on with the information portion of our kickoff meeting here. I'm going to minimize this window again so we can see all the information. So once again, for moving from FY24 into 25 and now into 26, one thing that we want to focus on as a required activity through the NSAW grant is articulating the non-credit to credit transitions. So many of you may have seen that we have now a dedicated consultant, Patty Zuccarello, who is focused intently on working with each of you, no matter where you are within your non-credit to credit journey, right, at your college, to continue building how these non-credit to credit, how these non-credit programs themselves can articulate to credit-bearing outcomes at your colleges as well. So with the NSAW grant, for FY26, the colleges had to identify at least one non-credit offering to articulate or map a pathway or process for students to transition from non-credit to credit without duplicating courses or competencies. So one thing I want to stress here is that this doesn't necessarily, for a requirement of the grant, it doesn't have to be set in place or institutionalized, right? We're looking that you are doing this work, you're articulating this, and you're continuing to work on how your non-credit programs can work into the credit side of the house, into those credit-bearing programs as well. But once again, this isn't a requirement that this is set in place by the end of FY26. And Patty, as I mentioned, she's going to be working intently, reaching out to colleges to provide technical assistance. She's also hosting a series of webinars that are focused on different core pieces of that non-credit to credit journey as well. And one thing I want to highlight here is that actually our next non-credit to credit webinar is January 28th from 10 to 11 for the non-credit to transitions webinar. And this is her focus with this particular webinar is moving along the framework via content mapping. One thing that I want to remind everybody about is this is a required portion alongside the operational meetings as well. So be sure to mark your calendars and to register for those webinars moving forward with the grant, moving into FY26. And you can find the full schedule of both operational meetings and those non-credit webinars on the NSAW grantee support page here through ICSPS. Like I said, I'm going to share out this slideshow here at the end of the presentation today, so you'll be sure to you'll have access to that schedule as well. Okay, and then for our third and final required activity is non-credit data collection. So as we know, without a dedicated line of funding for non-credit in previous years before FY24, one of the major things that we want to focus on is building the capacity of the community colleges to begin tracking and upgrading their data collection systems through the NSAW grant and through those funds. Over the years, we've seen really great outcomes when it comes to the colleges being able to have that access to those data collection systems. From year to year, we're able to see how you're tracking workforce data within your areas, student participation, and a lot of that comes out in those initial applications that you're sharing. So it's really interesting to see exactly how this funding has really evolved this particular activity. But just to remind everybody that non-credit data collection is one of our required activities. So when it comes to the allowability of expenses, one thing that non-credit programs have done over previous years is use the NSAW funds to purchase non-credit data collection platforms for their programs as well. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If you're looking to do that, that is allowable under the NSAW grant as well. And then additionally, the ICCB, we're continuing to work over the grant period to identify additional elements that will be added to our N1 collection. Our N1 is an annual report that focuses on enrollments for non-credit, sector analysis, so on and so forth. And we're continuing to build that with our research and analytics team here at the ICCB. So if there's any additional information when it comes to data collection, we'll be sure to share that with you all well in advance so you can prepare. And then also the exploration of PCS 1.6 course approval as well. I know that with non-credit programs, a lot of the vocational skills courses are tied into those, or you may be using your funds to bolster those programs as well. So once again, tracking that is imperative as well. And then we also there are a lot of activities that are allowable under the NSAW grant. I can't list them all here because we'd have a very long slideshow, very long presentation. But if you go to pages 5 and 6 of the NOFO, you can see other additional allowable activities through the NSAW grant. One thing that we try to really highlight is the flexibility of the NSAW funds and the NSAW grant itself. We know that working with employers and working in the non-credit space, some things can just pivot suddenly, right? Maybe an employer that you originally wanted to work with suddenly backs out, right? And so we want to make sure that we are allowing the flexible use of these funds to better serve you in what target area that you're needing to serve and to reach through your non-credit programs. So once again, if you wanted a more comprehensive list of other allowable activities, those can be found on pages 5 and 6 of the NOFO, and I've put the link here to our grant opportunities page so you can have easy access to that. So we're going to stop here for another discussion. So we recently had a question come from one of the colleges who was looking to inquire about the registration protocols, I guess, through the state and what other colleges are doing all across the state. So for discussion number 2, for your non-credit programs, does your college require you to formally register each participant through your college? Or do you have different procedures for your programs? So the college who reached out, they were wondering if there was any state level guidance or state level requirements for non-credit stating that if a non-credit student is enrolled through one of the trainings, do they have to be formally registered with your college, or is there a different procedure that you have at your college to, I guess, make sure that you're accommodating your non-credit registrations? And we reached out to our contacts here at the ICCB, and we're doing some research. I'm doing a lot of digging here to make sure this isn't a requirement or anything like that. But I think that I wanted to really just kind of open the floor to all of you out there in the field who are doing this work and see exactly what your procedure is or what is your protocol at your college. So once again,
I can share while people are dumping stuff in the chat. Can you hear me?
Yeah, excellent.
So at Harper, we have the non-credit departments. There are 2 of us, and one registers students the same way you would register for a credit program through Banner. That's the continuing professional education side. And then in community education, which is my side, we register students. Every single student is registered individually through our other system, through Modern Campus Destiny. However, if we are doing customized training with an employer, We do not capture the individual information of the students who are participating because those are considered employees of that employer partner. And so we count that as one employer. And then we might say, you know, there were 15 participants, but we do not capture their employees' information. And oftentimes that's been appreciated by the employer partners. They might want to maintain anonymity in some sort of way or not feel like this is just a Harper thing. This is something that the employer is providing to them as a you know, professional development opportunity.
I see. And that was kind of our thoughts too. We realized that maybe on the if you're enrolling participants or students within the college, within those like I said, like in our bucket, in our terms, the non-employer, a lot of those, it looks like people are saying here in the chat that we require our participants to register with the college. But when you're working with employers, that process might be a little bit different. So thank you for sharing that. I know there's a lot of things popping up here in the chat. I'm trying to read them all as they.
And Kristen asked in the chat how the college data crew feels about that. I don't know. It's never been something they've ever had concern about. We bring a lot of revenue into the college, and so I don't know that no one's ever complained.
I love what Billy's putting down because we have been hitting our heads with how customized participants, they don't think of themselves as college students. They aren't college students. They don't want to give that date of birth.
Yeah.
It's an annoying, it's a burden to partnering. It makes the public sector look incapable of partnering with the private sector effectively because consulting firms don't ask for that. So I love it, Billy. Mwah. Thank you. Best part of the webinar. You can record that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
For sure. That's a massive thing for us too. Like our data people really want to know everything. So we'll say numbers of people, but that's really hard to track too in Campus CE because like you put the business in there and it's one. It's considered one. So how do you report that to them? Like, do you tell does your corporate and community education department report out to your N1 data team?
Yes, but it is very vague, like what I'm saying. It's like we'll say we served 26 employers in this fiscal year. We brought in this much revenue, and no one really asks for more yet at this moment. So we're just, you know, operating like that. I don't see it ever being something they're going to push back on because it is the anonymity of the participants and sometimes the employers are protecting, you know, immigration status and things like that, that it's kind of none of our business. And maybe some individuals wouldn't be as comfortable participating if they had to provide that information. So we just don't require it.
I would like to ask a little deeper on some of your comments. I agree with registering them, and we don't have a problem with that. It's more the depth of information that, you know, that somebody in a financial aid in the credit bearing class has to provide much deeper details and demographics and all that. How deep do you go for a non-credit person? Is it just birth date and so forth? Or are you wanting to know? I'm a recovering Perkins administrator. Do we need the you know, single mom, you know, all that kind of stuff?
I'm happy to answer on behalf of McHenry because we require all people to be registered. And it's not a problem. I mean, when we do get pushback from a company a little bit, we have a pat, you know, answer that we provide to them. You know, should we ever get audited, we're required by, you know, to prove that we actually did this training, and our college wants that information in the system, and everything's protected. We talk about how we've got, you know, hundreds of thousands of registrations in our system that are protected, you know, credit students and non-credit students. And the benefit is that that person that's gone through the training then has a non-credit transcript. Should they ever leave your company or they, you know, they want to pursue, they put it on their resume, that type of thing, they've got, there's a record of them attending a training. So way back, I've been doing this a long time, and we were required way back with ETIP and all that kind of stuff to have it unduplicated. And that's a question for ICCB then. So how can you give an unduplicated count when we're not counting everybody? You know, so
Yes.
that's the other piece of that. But we've just stuck with it. we've just stuck with it. We don't, and as far as depth, first name, last name, home address, not company address, because otherwise we're falsifying records in our system, because our system requires home address, not company address. And then birth date are required, and a contact, obviously. They can use their work email, their work phone number. And we really honestly maybe we've lost a couple contracts in the years that I've been doing it because of it. Not really, though. I mean, usually companies understand that we're not sharing that information. We're not putting them on a marketing, like into our marketing department so that they get marketed to or any of those things. So that's where we're at.
So in reality, it is a reduce. I mean, you're asking important stuff, but you're not asking the full cadre of information.
No, we don't ask for Social Security. I mean, when I first started, Social Security was part of it, all those things, but no.
Yeah.
And it's very similar to, I'm like, it's almost like when you're telling Amazon, but with a birth date. But we're protecting that. Like, we're a community college. We're not sharing that information with anyone unless, of course, like I said, unless we get audited for some reason. And that's not happened in my 26 years. So
I guess
so I had a question. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
This is Eilish from Oakton, and I just had a question. Harper, do you issue certificates of completion? And if you do, then how do you, names, for completing whatever course they took? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so on the non-credit, open enrollment side, they do get a non-credit transcript, and they could print that off as the certificate of completion for any class that they've taken right directly from the system. However, on the customized training side, it's only if it's built into the contract with the employer, which oftentimes it is, if they want to have a certificate of completion or some other sort of credential that would qualify for the training that they're doing. In that case, the employer would provide us with the names of the people who actually participated and completed, and then we would print those out and provide that on the last day of the class. Good question.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add a little bit, Eric from College Lake County. When I started at the college 15, 16 years ago, I had clients push back on this, that they were not going to give the college this information for non-credit. One of those clients was county government. Fascinating. Since then, we ask for it. If we don't get it, we don't get it. Similarly to others, if they want a certificate of completion, then obviously they have to provide the names. For this grant, we are collecting names because we have to have those. So that's a requirement of the grant on our side. Recently, in the last 3 years, a Fortune 100 company that's been a longstanding client of ours had some kind of breach in security, and we have to complete a survey, and they absolutely want us never to have any of their employees' names that were in classes, any personal information about those individuals. So for us to continue to do business with them, we cannot have that information, and we can't ask for it. So, that's the skinny there. Very interesting.
Well, and I should add to a lot of we don't have the big Fortune 500s in McHenry. We're a lot more small business here, a lot of manufacturing. So there's so much crossover too with our open enrollment. We've got a big open enrollment program for our workforce training and our contract training. So a lot of those folks are already in our system, or they may have been in our system for the last 10 years, or they may have taken, credit classes. So they're already in our system. There's so much that's already happened there. But to your point, Eric, some of the biggest pushback have been our county partners. And I often, those are the ones I have a specific thing. I'm like, just like you require, you're a government entity. You require to prove that somebody's, lives in your county, that kind of
It's
thing.
always the family members that are the worst.
It is. It's absolutely, they're probably the ones that have given me the hardest time in all these years. They've always, I've explained the whys and why we're requesting this and, that data. And I talk about, if we can't prove, if we're ever, like if the state or whoever our grant entity is, if we can't prove that we actually have these people in classes, we may not get funding down the road. So, I just kind of go there with it, and it's been fine. So that's us though. And every county and every, district's going to be different with who your clients are. So.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So seems like there are very much a lot of nuances when it comes, and I'm glad that we have this discussion here. This is great information. One thing I want to point out, I think someone mentioned earlier about the unduplicated count. So you might have all seen, I believe it was yesterday, I sent out a reminder for the quarter four report for the NSAW grant for FY25, that we are running a pilot program where we are trying to collect the number of unduplicated students that are being served through the NSAW grant. And one thing that I want to remind everybody, we're just looking for just that total number. We're not looking for specific information, names, or any sort of demographic information, anything like that. This is just kind of a pilot year where we're trying to, once again, bolster our data collection there at the ICCB. Just want to remind everybody that we're just looking for just that total number, just to kind of give us a scope of exactly how many unduplicated students, because we realized that once we started to aggregate our data, there was a lot of duplication, but that's kind of the nature of the non-credit world. There's going to be students who are employees who are going to multiple sessions. And once again, we had a discussion with a work group regarding this topic, that a lot of that depends on the structure of your programs as well. So once again, we're just running this pilot for FY25 here at the end. So in FY26, we can continue to build this out and also take into account all these nuances that you have all brought to the forefront here in this discussion. So once again, thanks for everybody sharing. I know that we probably have a lot in the chat too. Brittany, was there anything in the chat that we didn't quite touch on during our discussion here?
I will say there is quite a bit of conversation going on in the chat.
I see the window popping up and I'm like, I'm trying to read them real quick.
Yeah, it's been a little hard for me to keep track because we also have some that are going back to kind of what they're doing. So I will save the chat when we're done here. And Alex, I can send that to you. And so I would encourage you all, one, to check out the chat, because if there are other programs who are doing things similar to you, write that name down. And you can either send myself or Alex an email. And if everyone's comfortable with it, we can share email addresses and you guys can connect and start communicating that way. But then I'll save the chat, and then anything that Alex or Levon feels is extremely pertinent and good for everybody to share, we could share that out in a little document and an email follow-up as well.
Excellent. Yeah. And one thing too is that we do encourage, we have our non-credit listserv as well. We usually use that for a lot of official communications from the ICCB, but it's also a resource for all of you as well. If there are any questions, or if you wanted to reach out broadly to everybody within who is on the listserv to, I guess, discuss a particular topic or a question, or maybe like a challenge or something, you can always feel free to use that if you're comfortable using that. But once again, if there's anybody, like Brittany said, if you want to go through the chat and there's colleges who are doing things similar to you, or you want to inquire more about their process, you can always feel free to reach out directly to that person, have that conversation, right? We want to make sure that we're continuing to build our networking and our collaboration here across the state. So excellent. So there was a lot there, and I'm going to be sure to go back to the chat as well, and probably look back at this recording and kind of continue building out this particular piece. This looks like something that we could really focus on, maybe intently, whether we publish a document out to everybody or we focus on an operational meeting, perhaps here later on in the course of FY26. So for the sake of time here, we'll continue working through, because we got some more reporting information next. Yes. Okay. So now, once again, thank you everybody for sharing on that last discussion there. We're going to go through the grant reporting walkthrough. So there were some changes that were made during FY25 that we're going to kind of more formally focus on here, so everybody's kind of on the same page. We had some process changes here at the ICCB when it comes to financial reporting. And for programmatic reporting, a lot of that's going to be staying the same as well. So, okay, for the programmatic report, it is, once again, it's going to be housed into JotForm. We found that JotForm is a really streamlined system to collect the data that we are wanting to for the NSAW grant. So that's going to continue to be built into job form and required. There's some information here, just once again, for your Q4 report moving forward into FY26, just to kind of keep a pulse on the work that's happening with the non-credit to credit articulation. In the optional section box down at the very bottom of that job form, you're going to want to enter your information regarding your program's progress or work with the non-credit to credit articulation. For the programmatic report, we're currently working on aggregating the data, and we're waiting for Q4 reports to come in. We have a dashboard that all of our FY24, FY25, and FY26 reports feed into, so we can continue having a repository for all of the information from your quarterly reports that we can continue building on. Once again, our data and analytics team is working on building that. And as soon as that link is created for the FY26 report, I'll be sure to share that out with the listener so you have that for your records as well. So for financial reporting, one thing that was changed during FY25 is that the ICCB has once again utilized JotForm for the financial reporting system. Within that JotForm, there is a table built in that looks just like our normal GOTA exempt financial reporting form where you'll input all of your information. And additionally as well, there is a attachment box where you can attach any additional documents. Say if there's any important information that you want to share alongside your financial report, you can do that as well. And then for the budget modification forms, once again, that is also built into JotForm, and it's housed on the ICCB website. So if at any time during the course of the FY26 grant, you need to submit a budget modification, which we're going to talk a little more intently on budget modifications and the rules here in a couple slides, I believe. That link is there. You can find that there. And it's once again, it's sent directly. The reason we're utilizing JotForm as well is that we are also conducting dual reviews with our grants management team who looks at the financial report and also looks at the budget modifications, because both have to be approved by our financial team, our grants management, and then also by me, our programmatic side of the house, before those can move forward and be put into place. So that's kind of the rationale for us incorporating a lot of this information in the JotForm, is that we can conduct those dual reviews and kind of streamline that system, because we know that a lot of times when you have to submit a budget modification, sometimes you kind of need to do so in a hurry, right? Maybe something with your project has changed and you need to accommodate very quickly. And we at the ICCB are trying to be mindful of that moving forward as well. And then for any additional resources for grant reporting, you can visit this bottom link here, the grants resources page, which houses a lot of our templates. There'll also be our links to our reports as well. So be sure to save this link here at the bottom once you receive it. This is a great resource that we want to make sure, as we're continuing to build our new website, we're trying to make sure that we have all the pieces there to streamline the work that's happening for all of you out there in the field. So with the reporting templates, we're going to talk about budget modifications. So at the end of FY25, we received some new guidance from our grants management team regarding budget modifications for the NSAW grant itself. So once again, I wanted to highlight these changes or this interpretation of the grant or from the budget modifications from the ICCB. So first and foremost, discretionary budget transfers between budget categories are capped at $50,000 and limited to 10% of the award. So within FY25, I believe that the original guidance that we provided is that you're only allowed to transfer up to 10% of your total award. Well, with the new interpretation, what we're seeing is that you can actually move discretionary between pre-approved budget categories. You can move up to $50,000 before you need to submit a formal budget modification that has to be approved by the ICCB. So as long as you're moving your funds between those pre-approved budget categories, up to $49,999, you will not need to submit a budget modification unless there is a major change in your scope of work for the project. So once again, we're working on the flexibility of this grant, trying to ensure that you're able to address the needs quickly and nimbly as they arise at your program. So one thing to keep in mind is that you can move up to $50,000 between pre-approved budget categories. So stated another way, as it says here on the slide, if the budget change from the approved budget is greater than 50,000 between budget categories, or the amount of the increase to any budget category is over 10% of the award, then a budget modification is required. So with the NSAW grant, with the cap for funding being 110,000, more than likely you're going to hit that 50,000 threshold, right, before you would reach the over the 10% of the total award. So just wanted to make sure everybody was on the kind of the same page when it came to that for budget modifications, that you have up to $50,000 between pre-approved categories before you need a budget modification. And when I say pre-approved budget categories, so say if you're in your original application, you had put in your full 110,000 into equipment, right? Maybe, oh, that's not a good example. Maybe you put in 50,000 into your equipment and then 60,000 into personnel, right? So suddenly you say you need to provide student stipends, which would go into the miscellaneous category. From Dave's Grizadas, but the 50K, I can't see all that. Brittany, would you mind reading Dave's comment there for me real quick?
Yeah.
Sure.
So it is the 50,000 is still capped at 10% for pre-approved categories, correct? Or the 10% does not apply for pre-approved categories.
And to my understanding, I don't know if we have Chris Blankenhorn, our Director of Compliance here at the ICCB, on the call, if he could offer a little more insight in it. But I believe that the 10% for the NSAW grant particularly would not apply. So it'd just be the 50,000. If that hopefully answers the question there. Or
okay. So I don't think ICCB has clarity on this. Let me just get that out of the way. Sure. And that's because we didn't create the language. We inherited poor language, about the budget mod change. So yes. So with the 10%, where it kicks in is if you change any one category by 10% of the award. So if you have 105, let's just call it 100,000 on the award, and if you move $10,001 in or out of any one category, then that would kick. But you could do 9999, 9999, 9999, all the way up to 50,000. So yesterday, and I'll put this in the chat, Bill was in our senior director for grants management was in an email chain, and he said 50K is an overall cap, right, for any one before you have to make a modification. Beyond that, think of transfers in and out of a category. If the grantee is adding to or cutting a category by more than 10% of the total award, they need a modification. That's a good size cut of the budget, so it needs approval. So the 10% cap is a per category thing. So for this one, you'll just, it kind of will, it still does apply, but if you're not moving, big chunks in or out of one category. But like personnel is a good example. You didn't hire someone for 6 months. That's probably going to trigger a move bigger than 10% of a non-credit award, which would be like, 10,500, something like that. Mm-hmm. So that was what Bill said yesterday. Okay. And I think it's probably in line with the intent. Mm-hmm. 50,000 for non-credit is allowing moving 50% of the grant. That's a lot. That's a lot. So, I've seen this in this conversation happening in multiple grants, actually multiple kickoff meetings over the last couple of days. And that was what Bill sent in clarification on one yesterday. So like I said, our ICCB's understanding has been evolving as we see it work. And that is the latest that I've heard, but I I do think we need a little bit of clarity across the grants on it.
I see. Oh,
Seeing that question come from David, who I know works across many grants.
yes.
Yeah, that helps a lot. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you, Chris.
I'll put that language into the chat right now.
Thank you. Oh, 1 second here. I'm trying to get my window to reshare here. I ended up losing it. For some reason, it's a black screen. Hold on a second.
I see
We
your
can see
spreadsheet
it.
or your slideshow.
Oh, you can't see? Oh, it was just minimized. Okay, there we go. Yeah, thank you, Chris. I'm glad, as Chris said, this is constantly evolving, and I'm glad that he was here on the call to kind of clarify that question. Were there other questions that were popping in the chat? I think I saw one in there.
It was Eric clarifying the 10% applied to a total grant.
Okay.
Or the total award.
Okay. And as Chris said, as we at the ICCB continue kind of delving into this rule and kind of offering our interpretations of it, we'll be sure to share that information out with everybody as well. Whether that's formally through an operational meeting, some kind of publication of sorts. So, right. Thank you, Chris. Was there any more questions about budget modifications before we continue? Okay, then we will continue moving forward. So real quick, we wanted to focus on what exactly are allowable expenses. So we kind of provided a comprehensive breakdown by the approved categories, the allowable categories within the NSAW grant. So once again, this is not an exhaustive list, but this is just a list that we have compiled here at the ICCB for what exactly is allowable. And one thing I actually wanted to point out too, before we go too further into this, here in the next, I wouldn't say months, weeks, or anything like that, but here soon, the ICCB, we are actually compiling a NSAW grant manual where we are building a larger document that we're going to share out with the field that has a lot of information regarding the implementation of the NSAW grant. And this information is going to be made available within that manual as well. Just common questions that we receive, common protocol that we have for the NSAW grant, just to provide a sort of one-stop kind of shop if you have questions about the NSAW grant moving forward. And that will be published as soon as we have that document verified and authenticated. So be on the lookout for that as well. I just want to make sure that I brought that to everyone's attention today, that we're going to be providing a more comprehensive manual for the NSAW grant moving forward. So for allowable expenses, as you can see here, there are multiple categories that are allowable for the NSAW grant. So first and foremost is personnel. So this is payment for staff. So if there's directors, instructors, tutors, coordinators who are working on the NSAW grant, those are an allowable expense. And kind of coinciding with that, fringe, this would include benefits for staff listed within your personnel category. For travel, so this could be travel to and from conferences that are non-credit related. Any required meetings, if there are class locations, we know that a lot of non-credit programs, maybe you're working at a branch campus and you're transporting students, things like that, or if you're transporting staff, so on and so forth, travel would be an allowable expense. So supplies, this would include materials consumed during the life of the grant. So this would be office supplies, textbooks, possibly laptops, and any additional classroom needs for your non-credit programs. Equipment is also allowable under the NSAW grant as well. So this includes material that's tangible personal property and lasts longer than the life of the grant and costs more than $10,000 per item. So this would be equipment for training purposes. Say if you wanted to purchase a forklift, right, for one of your non-credit trainings, that is allowable and would be categorized under the equipment category. It could be rechargeable laptop stations with laptops as well. Equipment, once again, is one of those things that if you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out to us here at the ICCB and we'll answer any and all questions that we can. And additionally, on the first slide, we mentioned subcontracting for services for the NSAW grant. So contractual services are allowable. This would include products or services procured by contract, as the name kind of states. Subaward budgets also belong in this category. So this would be exam fees if purchased with a contract, seats in a virtual program, and so on and so forth. And then continuing with that, consultants or any professional services. So if there is any curriculum designers or any other type of consultants that are working on your install program, that is allowable as well. Occupancy, rent and utilities. We know that sometimes the non-credit programs have to rent out space for their non-credit training. So this is also allowable under the install grant. So this include rent, utility payments with an apportionment in relation to grant activities usage. Telecommunications are also allowable under the grant. So any cell phone plans, internet plans that coincide with your non-credit trainings and non-credit activities are also allowable as well. Training and education. Training and education is another category that is also allowable. This would be training for employees. So one common mistake that we see is that sometimes colleges will put in student activities within training and education, the training and education category, but training and education is specifically for training for employees that would be working on the install grant. This would include conference fees, any certification fees for faculty or staff working on the grant, exam fees as a part of professional development. So anything tied to training of employees working on the grant would be categorized under your training and education. And then miscellaneous costs. This would include all other allowable costs not covered in other categories. So this is where we see a lot of your student support wraparound services would be categorized under. And this can include tuition reimbursement, stipends for many different things, whether those are for food, for travel expenses, things like that. And we also do have formal guidance from the ICCB regarding stipends, how to implement those, and the sort of records that you need to keep on your end when you're administering stipends to your students as well. And then also we put in gas cards as well. That kind of ties into the stipends once again. Oh, thank you, Chris. Yeah, I was going to ask if somebody could put that in chat. So there is the formal guidance from the ICCB regarding stipends. Sorry, I'm back to screen. So feel free to take a look at that document there. If you have any questions about administering stipends with grant funds, be sure to read through that. And if you have any questions, reach out to me and I will be sure to answer any questions that you have. Does anybody have any questions about allowable expenses? We get a lot of questions throughout the course of the grant year regarding this particular component. So I want to make sure that I pulled this out from our grant manual to highlight here today. And if you don't have any questions here today, always feel free to reach out to us. That's what we're here for, to help you answer these kind of nuanced questions when it comes to the allowability of the utilization of grant funds. But did anybody have any pressing questions before we continue? Okay, I'll take that as a no, and we'll continue on here. So highlighting the grant deliverables. So first and foremost, you must carry out all grant deliverables of your proposed scope of work within your original application as aligned with the objectives of this opportunity. To carry out and participate in all required activities. So that would be the operational meetings, the non-credit to credit webinars, and so on and so forth. Attend the operational meetings, just as I said, as scheduled throughout the year, as well as participate in other meetings as they arise. And that would kind of encompass the non-credit to credit webinars. One thing that I want to highlight here is submitting the success stories. So for each year of the grant, we require that colleges submit at least one success story for an employer and one success story for a student by February 28th of the end of the grant year. So that'd be 2027 for FY26. And I know that not every program is specifically, you might be focusing just working with an employer or just working with employers, or you might just be offering the in-house trainings. So depending on the focus of your program, you would kind of abide by those. It would be to your discretion. So if you're not working with employers, you wouldn't be required to submit an employer success story. If you were just working with employers, you would just submit an employer success story. I hope that makes sense, because we know that sometimes the programs are working with employers and students, or you might be focusing more intently on one particular entity there. But just be sure to submit those by February 28th of 2027 for the FY26 grant. For the financial reports and the programmatic reports, be sure to file those on time or submit those on time to the ICCB via the correct avenue. So for the jot form report, when you submit the jot form reports, those automatically are submitted and we are notified here at the ICCB so we can verify that you have submitted your report. So those are automatically completed. You don't have to worry about, you can follow up. A lot of people try to follow up and make sure that their reports went in there, and always feel free to do so. And we'll double check to make sure that we're receiving everything on our end. And then also this is something new for FY26. So during the NSAW grant cycle, in addition to the quarterly reports, we are expecting all grantees to provide their projected expenditure dollar amounts by the last date of the quarter via email to the iccb.noncredit.illinois.gov email. As many of you know, Levon and I, we reach out during the course of the quarters once those reports come in, just to kind of assess where the colleges are at with their projected expenditures, especially if there are colleges who might not be expending as much as we sort of like to see during the course of the grant. And we've done a lot of back and forth, kind of reaching out to people, kind of seeing what their plan is to expend those grant dollars. So moving forward in FY26, we figured that it would be easier to make this a deliverable for the grant alongside the financial report and the programmatic report. And this only needs to be submitted just as an email, just showing, say, if you submit your Q2 report, right? And there are maybe some expenses that are not going to show up until Q3. That's the kind of information that we would like to see and keep track of moving forward so we can better assess and provide technical assistance moving on through the quarters. Like I said, this doesn't need to be this is an additional form or anything like that. This will just be submitted directly to our non-credit email per quarter. Additionally, here is a breakdown of the reporting schedule. This maintains the same dates as the FY25 schedule, just with the years updated. So be sure to, once you receive the slides, be sure to either write these down or put them in your calendar, write them down somewhere, and keep track of those. We always try to send out reminders during the life of the grant, of reminding everybody about the due dates for those reports as well. Okay, and funding deadlines. So these are the funding deadlines for this year's rendition, or the FY26 rendition of the NSAW grant. So grant funds must be obligated by December 31st of 2026. All goods and products must be ordered by December 31st and then received by February 28th of 2027. All services must be rendered by December 31st of 2026. Grant funds must be liquidated by February 28th of 2027. And then for final budget modifications, those will be due November 1st of 2026. One thing with budget modifications is, if possible, try to get those in as early as possible before that November 1st deadline. We always see that there's a large number that comes in kind of right there at the end of that deadline there. So we want to make sure that we're moving through those modifications on our end and assessing them. And if there's any revisions needed, we can get those back to you. So kind of being early on budget modifications is really imperative moving forward with the grant. So be sure November 1st of 2026 is when all final budget modifications will be due for the NSAW grant. And this is also information that is listed in our NOFO as well. So whether you want to, if you want to screenshot this, write this down somewhere, put it in your calendar, however you keep track of these things, there'll be multiple ways that you can access this information, either through the ICCB. And if you ever have any questions as well, feel free to reach out, because we know we've had some situations where there's been some nuances with the delivery of goods and things like that for the grant. So be sure to reach out if there's any issues that arise, say when it comes to procuring equipment or supplies or things like that with the NSAW grant. We'll be happy to work with you. Brittany, would you please read Noah's question? I don't have all of it here.
Yep, absolutely. So by the last date of the quarter, so would those projected expenditure dollar amounts be emailed along with the quarterly programmatic and financial reports 30 days after the quarter, or separately at the ending date of the quarter, like the slide said?
It should be separately as an email by the end of the quarter. I think the language there might have been, I think what we were expecting to see is when you submit your financial reports is to also send that the projected expenditures via email as well. That makes sense. Yep, no problem, Noah, of course. Okay, were there any other questions in the chat? I know we're kind of getting close here to our.
Yep, we had one pop up.
Yes.
Do you know the status of the grant agreements being sent out?
For the status of the grant agreements, I do have a tracker that's listing all, and Grant and Chris is also working intently on this as well, and our grants management team. We are moving through those as quickly as possible. I believe we have a large number of them that are going to be in queue to be executed by our executive director. I don't know the exact schedule of when those are received by our executive director, but usually I think that it maybe takes a couple weeks for us to do our internal process to get those signed, and then we have to get those saved into our system. And just for an FYI, we have a bit of our grants management team is they work diligently and they are working so hard on these grant agreements, but there is a lot of work for them to be done. So there might be a slight delay on getting those grant agreements back. But Chris and I are both working to get those grant agreements moving through the process. Actually, I just saw there was a batch that was sent out this morning to some of our colleges. So Chris, I don't know if you have any more insight on that, or if
I think every college except for one has been sent grant agreements.
Yes.
That one still has an outstanding. They're still working on finalizing their budget. So everyone should have gotten them. If you don't think your institution has gotten them and you're not knowing you're that one, I would say reach out to Alex to make sure that it's going to the right people. And then once you send them back, I would say from there, just you're good. Like Alex said, I usually tell people 45 to 60 days after you send the agreement back is when you can expect to get your check in the mail. It usually maybe a few days for Brian to sign it. Once it's been returned to us, they'll get it to him. He signs everything wet, so then it has to be scanned and all sent to our finance. Our finance then sends it to the comptrollers. The comptrollers has 5 days to approve and 30 days to send the check. So that's where that number comes, mostly on the comptroller's side. The one thing I will note is that getting your grant agreements returned, signed, might have a little delay, which is why I said, once you send them back, you're moving in that direction. They will be executed probably within a couple of days. They will be sent to the comptrollers. But we already had a kind of short-staffed grants management department, and they lost another. They're down to one associate or one assistant. So in terms of workflow and prioritization, getting them scanned versus getting other agreements out, there may be a little delay there. But if you've sent it back, it is being executed. It is being sent to the comptroller's office, and we will be getting it back to you. There just might be a little bit of delay there as we work through all the other January cycle grants. So.
Thank you, Chris, for highlighting that. Were there any other, I'll just stop here for a moment. Were there any other questions about the funding deadlines or about any of the grant deliverables? I'm not trying to move too fast through slides. I want to make sure that we're answering questions here as we go.
One thing I want to add, Alex.
Yes.
And that I'm only doing this because I know this is a non-competitive grant and these are the same FY25 people as the FY26 people, probably in total, in full. But, as we're closing out, you've got your quarterly report deadline, for 1/30 that's due. We'll then be reaching out to you about closeout stuff. And then 45 days after that is when the kind of return of funds stuff happens. So once we get past this quarterly reporting period for FY25, we'll probably be reaching out regarding all those closeout steps. So
excellent. All right, I don't see any questions popping up here in the chat, so we'll continue on with our presentation here. Just a real quick, just reminders and expectations for the grant. Make sure that quarterly reports are submitted on time. This hasn't really been a big issue in previous grant cycles. But once again, just wanted to stress the importance of submitting those reports on time. If there is some kind of issue that arises, be sure to reach out ahead of time. Usually we can kind of work with you on making sure that extensions are granted in extenuating circumstances, or just make sure that we're in the loop if there's any issues that arise with your quarterly reports. Grantee attendance at operational meetings is required, so be sure on the ICSPS NSAW grantee resources page, be sure to mark your calendars and register for those operational meetings as well. So attendance is required for those meetings. Ensure non-credit data is captured, once again, alongside your own internal processes for collecting data. Be sure that each quarter you are collecting non-credit data as needed. And one thing too I wanted to highlight is if there is any issues that you foresee or encounter when you're filling out your jot form report, or say if you need an edit to your report because you forgot something, you're like, oh, there was additional students who moved through and actually gained their certificates. Reach out to me directly. I can go ahead and I can work with you to get those edits made, or have you edit them yourself. Once again, whatever would work best for you. And then also spend the money. I think that's one thing too. Once again, like I said, we're always so excited to see that we have another year of the NSAW grant, but spending the money is so imperative to the access of these funds each year. With the funds being spent, that is signaling to the legislature that this particular line of funding is needed, and it will continue to be able to have a stronger case once the budget book each year for the state is made. If you encounter any issues with spending your money, like I said, with us requiring the expenditure projections here in the quarter, we're going to be trying to kind of get on top of those areas of technical assistance when we can throughout the quarter. But at any time, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me as well, and I will be sure to help you along and see if we can help with that process. And then one final reminder. I've seen we know that from year to year with the NSAW grant, sometimes roles change. People maybe cycle out of the colleges, or maybe just some shuffling going on. So if there's any personnel who need to be added to the non-credit listserv, please email me directly there at my email on the slide here, and I will get that request put in. And usually that's a very quick turnaround to get somebody on the non-credit listserv. So just be mindful of that. If there's any new staff who need to be added to that listserv, or if you're not sure you're on the listserv, just reach out and I can have our contact here at the ICCB double check to make sure that you're on that listserv. Or if anybody needs removed as well, feel free to reach out to me directly through email. And I think we're getting close to the end here. So we're moving in our next rendition, our second year of the NSAW conference, is happening during the FY26 grant cycle. So I just wanted to remind everybody to plan to attend the FY26 NSAW conference. Our focus this year is demonstrating value. Once again, that's been a major topic as I've gone to other conferences, just demonstrating the value of our non-credit programs across the state. The registration through ICSPS can be found here. So if you haven't registered, or if you plan to attend, be sure to go to that link here. And you can, I believe that, Brittany, there's registration. There's also the reservations for the room block at the hotels there in Normal, if I'm correct.
Yep. And I was getting ready to schedule an email to go out on Tuesday, because I know Monday is a holiday, but you all get to hear the information first since you're here. So registration will close on February 17th. So if you haven't registered, please be sure to do so by the 17th. And then our room block closes on February 3rd. We have a room block at the Marriott and a room block at the Hyatt, which is just right across the street. So all of that information will go out first thing next week, but wanted to share that with you all as well.
Lori said the room block is sold out at both hotels.
Okay, Lori, I will get on the horn and we'll see if we can get them to add some more rooms. Thank you for letting me know.
I think we've seen an uptick in registrations and attendees from last year, so it's a great thing to see. And once again, we're working through building the schedule right now and the list of sessions, and we have a really great event plan for this year. So be sure to attend. It's a great networking opportunity. And additionally, we are also partnering with ISET and WeTrain this year for this year's rendition of the conference. So if there's any members who maybe perhaps aren't on this call today that you think would find the conference beneficial and would like to attend, be sure to share that information with them as well. We're happy to have our partnered organizations working together with our NSAW conference this year, providing their insight for the implementation. So just want to give a shout out to our organizations there. And then, as Brittany said, she's going to send out more additional information for the conference via our listserv. So be on the lookout for that. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I can, or Brittany as well, if you have any questions for the NSAW conference. And I think with that, as we come close to the end here, we got about 5 minutes here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. This is all of my contact information, my phone number, my email. If you have any questions regarding the NSAW grant as we're moving forward through the process, whatever may arise, feel free to reach out. You can also give me a call, or if you want to schedule a additional time outside of like a Zoom call or a WebEx call, whatever you want to need. I want to make sure that I'm here for you all to get these questions answered and to be a resource to you all. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and we'll go back to our slide here. I know that there's a lot in the chat here. I'm looking, there's over 100 messages, so a lot of information here. And Brittany said she's going to share that. Okay, Dalton put in the chat here, you can find the recordings and resources at the following links. That goes to our NSAW grantee support. The registration for the webinars is also listed on that page as well. And then the NSAW conference link is also housed on the ICSPS website as well. So with that, with our last few minutes here, does anybody have any questions about anything we've covered? We covered a lot of information, had some really great discussion, but I just want to make sure before we end our call, if there's anything else any pressing, burning questions that you need answered before we conclude for the day. Okay, not seeing anything popping up. No one's raising their hand or anything. All right. Well, I will go ahead. We can conclude today's meeting. Be sure if you want to gain access to the recordings, or if you have any questions about anything covered today, feel free to reach out or to utilize the links that are saved in the chat. We're excited for another year, and we're so thankful that we're able to have another year of the NSAW grant. So thank you all for the work that you do. Thank you for attending, and I hope you have a warm, happy weekend.